Want a huge deal on a large pizza? For a very limited time at Donato's, buy any large pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for 50% off. Yes, half off. Use promo code HALF. Donato's. Gotta love more.
The Sports Desk at the Columbus Dispatch presents the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast. With your host, Ohio State basketball beat writer Adam Jardy.
Brandon Matisse says, "Give me the rock." Here it goes. Up and away. Slam jam bam. And now he does a little dance.
Now, the BuckeyeXtra Basketball Podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is Adam Jardy from the Columbus Dispatch. Today is Tuesday, April 28th, 2026, and it's my official duty to welcome you into episode 555 of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. Welcome to Jubilation City. Welcome to our continued run of podcasts here with special guests. So since we last podcasted, Ohio State has landed another player via the transfer portal. That would be Memphis transfer guard Curtis Givens III. And in a few moments here on the podcast, we are going to be joined by Jason Munz, Memphis Tigers men's basketball beat writer for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. He's going to talk to us about Givens, and about his fit, about all kinds of things that we can hopefully learn, just like we've done podcasts here where we've had reporters on that covered Justin Pippen at Cal and Andrea Jelovich at Kentucky. This continuing a trend here, and I've gotten a lot of good feedback on those prior episodes. I'd encourage you, if you're still kind of trying to get to know who some of these guys are and how they fit and what they can and can't do, just scroll back a couple episodes in the podcast feed. It's been great having different voices on here and then getting to go through how some of this has all come together. And I think, honestly, this time of year, I think we've all learned a lot. It's a theme I keep coming back to when it comes to covering the transfer portal, but you are so rapidly trying to learn as much as you can about a player and about their skills and about how they fit and all that stuff. And so I've just found it really beneficial to have people on to talk about their experiences covering some of these players and getting to know these players. So feel free to go back, give those a listen. Like I said, I've gotten good feedback from those of you who have been listening, and I appreciate that. So thanks everyone for reaching out like that. Here's your roster reminder as far as where things stand right now. John Mobley Jr., Amari Bynum, Anthony Thompson, Josh Ojonwuna, Ivan Yagovin, Andrea Jelovich, Alex Smith, Justin Pippen, Jimmy Williams, and Curtis Givens. And from this point, I'd expect like a back end guy or two to kind of round things out, maybe a redshirt type of player, although whether that makes sense, we'll talk more about here at the end of the podcast. But that's, if we're looking for who's going to play the minutes, who's going to score the points and do the things, it's mostly going to be those 10 guys. So that's where we are as we get ready to flip the calendar to May. Probably have some more news on the vacant assistant coaching job position here before long as well. So stay tuned on that. That roster with 10 guys, which, I mean, include Miles Hero and Braylon Nash. Like, those guys still factor in as far as like being on the roster. So not really expecting them to log any sort of appreciable heavy minutes, but let's not completely gloss over them, I suppose. But when looking at the roster as it stands, Jeff Borzello over at ESPN earlier this morning actually put out his 2026-27 way too early top 25 rankings. And he had Ohio State 28th, which is funny in that sentence that we had 25, 26, 27, and 28. Maybe that's just fun to me. And then John Rothstein has Ohio State 23rd. And John does an unbelievable job covering the sport at every level and knowing every move, every game, all these. His memory is incredible. He has Ohio State 23rd, but doesn't have Givens on there yet. Did have Matthew Griachich as like a projected starter for a little while. So even for someone who's dialed in as John Rothstein, like, it's hard to keep all of this straight. But those are two early looks as far as maybe where Ohio State sits as it goes through the offseason here. I do want to talk more about Curtis Givens. We'll get to that here in a second because I did speak with him yesterday. Before we do, on the status of John Mobley Jr. So Monday afternoon, NBA early entry draft list came out and listed 71 players who still have collegiate eligibility but are going through the NBA draft process. It's only 71. That's not. It was like 246 a couple of years ago. 71 this year, which certainly the NIL era has played a significant role in all of that. But it's also an incomplete list because John Mobley Jr. is going through that process. He has not withdrawn his name from the NBA draft process yet. And last night, it was easy to say, okay, here's a list. He's not on it. Therefore, he's officially back at Ohio State. Not yet. There's a paperwork snafu, and he is supposed to be on that list. He's still trying to get NBA workouts and to get more feedback on his draft stock. So the expectation remains that he will be back at Ohio State for his junior year. Nobody's really operating under any pretenses that won't be the case, but it's not official yet. So sometimes you spend a couple of hours trying to confirm something and report something, and then what you're able to confirm is that there's no story yet. No news has happened. And then it kind of looks like you're not doing anything, but you actually were working like all evening, and that was kind of what yesterday was. So the deadline for players to withdraw and maintain their collegiate eligibility is Wednesday, May 27th. So still has time to go through this and to get more feedback and things like that. As we've talked about on here, this is one of those things that it makes all the sense in the world for guys to do this. I'm surprised more guys don't. You get a better understanding of what the NBA thinks of you. You get another set of eyes or other sets of eyes, critiquing you and giving you feedback on where you need to improve. I think this is incredibly beneficial for like every player. So, like I said, I am surprised that fewer people are taking advantage of it, even in this current NIL era, where in the majority of cases, guys are going to make more, if not significantly more money by staying in college. That's just where we are right now. So that's that. Let's move on to Givens here now. So before I have Jason on to talk about him, quick rundown here. So he's a Memphis kid who went to Montverde Academy first in high school, won a national championship as a high school senior, and then began his career. He was a top 70 recruit. Began his career at LSU, played there for 2024-25, played in 32 games, including 12 starts, 4.8 points, 1.7 rebounds, 1.6 assists. He shot 26.9% from the floor and 24.6% from three. And I should mention he is a 6'3", 185-pound guard. So he plays one season at LSU, enters the transfer portal, and transfers to Memphis. And everything took an uptick last year at Memphis. So he went from 4.8 to 9.4 points. He went from 1.7 to 2.1 rebounds, 1.6 to 2.3 assists, 0.5 to 0.8 steals, and his shooting percentages all drastically improved. So he took more shots as a sophomore. He went from 5.7 to 7.5, and his field goal shooting percentage went from 26.9 to 43.1. And his three-point percentage, he took about the same number, went from 3.7 as a freshman to 3.8 per game as a sophomore. But he went from 24.6% from three to 36.5% from three. Now, in the American last season, that 35.1% three-point percentage, just in league games, was 22nd best. He also had an assist rate in league games, 16.8. That was 18th best. And these are according to Ken Palm here. And then he committed 2.6 fouls per 40 minutes. That was 23rd best. On the season, 2.1 fouls committed per 40 minutes. So clearly a player who took a step from freshman to sophomore, even while going from one program to the next. And when I asked him about his game, I said, where did your game grow the most from your freshman year to your sophomore year? He said, I think I was able to be more efficient and I was able to get to my spots. I know where I like to shoot from, and I was more precise with my movements. Not a lot of wasted motion. He said, drawing back to my efficiency and being more patient, I think my game really grew in that area. I said, is that like a maturity thing? Like you go from freshman to sophomore, you get a little bit older, that stuff? He said, He said, you could say that, but I think it was more a confidence thing. He said, just being more confident, really stepping up and just doing it. He did miss a couple games mid-season, and I asked him about it. He said he had a quad injury. He said he got kneed in the thigh. He didn't have his pads on, and it was an injury that lingered. Just took him a little while to get past it. I asked him what he's working on between now and like when he gets to Ohio State, which he said he's planning on being on campus at the beginning of June. Like that seems to be the window where all these guys will get together for the first time. But he said, I'm definitely working on my ball screen reads, being able to make better decisions off ball screens, then just improving my touch and shot making ability. Now, I thought this answer was really interesting. He said, one thing I'm really looking forward to, I'm going to come up here and take a lot of pride in, is raising my field goal percentage and my three-point percentage. I know I'm more than capable of being that 45, 46 range from the field, and definitely 40% from the three. I just thought that was an interesting answer. That's not often, you don't normally get answers like that. Usually it's like, I just want to get better and I want to be the best player that I can be, whatever. But like when I spoke with him, there's a lot of very specific and unique responses to questions as far as things that were important to him, things that he wanted people to know about him. I asked him why he picked Ohio State, and he said, I knew it was a really good culture, that I would be surrounded by great people. And I really trust and believed in Coach Diebler and his staff. I trust the plan that they have for me. I know the roster's full of great guys. It's as clear as day. The environment is something I want to be a part of. I said, well, how'd you figure that out so quickly? Because that's the constant in this era that we hear about, is when guys are transferring, like it's speed dating, and it's so everything moves so quickly. I said, well, how'd you figure that out? And he said, the coaches tell me about the culture and the type of guys they want in the program and what they're about. He said, I figured it out pretty quick. And talking with some of the players, I asked them questions. I heard nothing but good things. I said, who did you talk to? And so he said the one player on the roster that he knows a bit is John Mobley Jr. And he knows Junie from having played against him in AAU ball. So when I asked him, like, who'd you spend time with? Who'd you talk to get some of those ideas about the program? He said Mobley. He said, I got to spend a little time with him. He said, when I came on my visit, when I was walking in the gym, he was working out and putting shots up. And then we got to talk for a little bit. So I said, how do you see yourself fitting into how Ohio State plays? How they describe like your role, like what this all looks like? And he said, I think it's everything I'm looking for. They're looking for another leader to step up and produce big time. And the coach was looking for that out of me. I thought that was really what I needed, to be given the opportunity to lead and produce at a higher level than I have before. He said he doesn't really view himself as a one position type of player. Said he can play the one, the two, combo guard. I would imagine with his size, there's some potential here, because you're looking at now Pippen's 6'4", Mobley 6'2", Givens and Williams are both like 6'3", 6'4". That's a little more height than what Ohio State had in the backcourt last year. And I think that makes it more likely that as we look at this roster and say, like, well, who are the backups at like the three? Who's going to back up on the wing? Could be some of these guys. It could be more three-guard lineups that Ohio State couldn't play last year, because the only guard you had with any real height was Tayson Chapman. Trying to play Thornton, Mobley, Cups together just wasn't big enough. There's some more size this year. I would imagine that's going to have something to do with how some of these guys' roles will play out, and what some of these substitutions are going to look like, what some of these lineups are going to look like. And when I asked him, what do you think about the talent on the roster? Last thing I'll get into on the podcast, because I do want you to go read the story. But he said, I love that we have really good guard play in John Mobley and Justin Pippen. Those two guys I know really well, and I know they're real high-level players. They've proved it on the college level. I'm looking forward to that. I do also know that we've got really good bigs who can do pretty much everything. So I really love that about our roster. So like I said, you can go read the full story. I asked him about what he hopes fans see from him. A couple of other things that I didn't get into here on the podcast, but you can go to dispatch.com and you can read that. If it's not up today, Tuesday the 28th, it will be up Wednesday, the morning of the 29th. So look for that here pretty shortly. That's next on the to-do list. Also, I should add, there was Ohio State put out the official word today that he's signed, he's in, and in the press release, Diebler, he said, quote, he fits what our program is about in every way. He's an experienced two-way guard that will provide versatility in the backcourt. All right, so now I want to remind you that you can subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you enjoy your favorite podcasts. If you subscribe, you'll automatically get the newest ones just as soon as our man Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, can grab them and publish them for us. While you're subscribing or downloading, please leave a review, please click 5 stars, and please consider telling a friend. Thanks to everyone who's taking the time to do all those things. Donato's is legendary for putting so many toppings on their pizzas, but just wait till you hear what they're taking off. For a very limited time, when you buy any large Donato's pizza, you can add a large one-topping pizza for 50% off. That's right, half off. You order using promo code HALF. Order your favorite large Donato's pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for half off today. Donato's, gotta love more. So we've got a special guest here on this episode of the BuckeyeXtra Men's Basketball Podcast. His name is Jason Munz, and he's the Memphis basketball beat writer for the Memphis Commercial Appeal. And Jason, I'm thrilled to have you on today to talk about Curtis Givens here in a second. But first, how has the transfer portal season treated you as a beat writer?
They are never boring, and that is the most that's the most I can ask for. They here at Memphis, they tend to get a little bit wild just because before this current off season that we are in, if you combined the previous 3 off seasons here with Penny Hardaway and Memphis, there were a combined total of 3 returners. So we're talking about like several dozen transfers, or maybe not several dozen, at least 2.5 dozen transfers over the course of 3 off seasons. So I built up, sort of a leathered exterior to the transfer portal. This off season is a little bit different. They welcomed back. They're bringing back 2 players from this past off season, so it's a little bit different. But no, it's always an exciting time here in Memphis, and so yeah, we're right in the thick of it right now.
Well, I'm excited to get some thoughts in all those, moving pieces over the last several years, to get some of your impressions on Curtis here, because obviously he entered the portal, committed to Ohio State, and, up here in Columbus, we're still kind of trying to get to know a little bit about him and his game and all of that. And so I wondered if maybe we could just start by going back in time a year or so. And this might be a little more difficult given that you have so many names kind of bopping around in there, but when he did transfer from LSU to Memphis, like what was the I guess the feeling there, and what sort of expectations were there when he got to Memphis after his freshman season at LSU?
Well, if you don't mind, let's go back even further. Okay. Out of high school, because obviously he's from Memphis,
right?
And so he spent his first two seasons of high school at a place called Memphis University School, and then he went from there to Montverde, right, where he played with a bunch of big names and did some nice things there. And so, like, obviously Memphis was Penny Hardaway and Memphis were recruiting him heavily out of high school, and it had come down to his decision day, and everyone locally, every bit of intel that I was given and other reporters here were given was that it was going to be Memphis. And there's like this big ceremony, like an announcement thing at
sure,
one of his dad's restaurants. His dad owns a restaurant here, and so they go out. We all go out to the restaurant, and there's a lot of people, and his family is very well known, very high profile family in Memphis, and then he makes the announcement for LSU, and a lot of people were a bit puzzled by that. And so I say all that to say, though, that after he spent his first season at LSU and it didn't exactly go very well, even I would say even before it didn't go well, a lot of people quietly assumed that he'd probably end up at Memphis at some point. Yeah. Even though, he didn't pick Memphis initially, and they were right. He things didn't go well at LSU. He goes into the transfer portal, and lo and behold, you look up and he's coming to Memphis. And so when that happened, when he made that announcement and everything else, I think a lot of people were hopeful that coming home would be beneficial for him. A lot of people were hopeful that playing for Penny Hardaway would help him. Penny is, sort of known for giving his backcourt players a lot of freedom on offense especially. And, a lot of people were, again, at least hopeful. There was a lot of hope that Curtis Givens III coming here as a second-year player back home would help him, feel a little bit more comfortable, and it would lead to better production and more success on the floor. So that was kind of the temperature for a lot of the fans and a lot of the people who have expectations for men's basketball at Memphis with regard to Curtis Givens III when he committed here.
Okay. So he gets there, and from just like a production standpoint, I mean, he took a step forward in essentially every category. He was a more efficient shooter. His production was up across the board. How primarily did he fit into Penny's system? I know he was, I think, their third leading scorer last season, but how did Penny primarily use him last year?
Well, so he was mostly used as a two guard, off the ball predominantly. And I think that might be where that might be some of what, didn't like why he didn't progress even more. Okay. I feel like he is much more suited to be a true point guard. And I think that's predominantly what his role was at LSU and the same in high school. But that's just not exactly the way Penny operates. Penny likes to have players who are very versatile, who can play multiple positions. And it just so happened that he also had Doug McDaniel, who played at Michigan and Kansas State. And, like his position is the one. Like, he is a point guard. Like, he can play off the ball some, but if he's on your team, he's going to be your point guard no matter who else you have on your team. So Curtis was utilized more in that off-ball guard spot. If Doug, obviously if he needed a break, or if he needed like if Penny wanted to throw a different look at somebody, you would put Curtis on the ball. But for the most part, he was your off-ball two guard, and he did okay with it. But it does make you wonder, kind of knowing what you know about his strengths and those sorts of things. It makes you wonder if that was the best way to utilize him. And if you had, if you had used him as more of a true, straight up point guard, could it have been even better?
Yeah. And that's interesting. So I did get to catch up with Curtis, yesterday, and talk to him about the year and about like where he thought his game grew and where he wants to still get better. And the things he talked about to me were that he wants to get better at like reading ball screens and being better with that, like with the ball in his hands. And then he talked about very specific shooting numbers. He's like, I want to shoot like 46% from the floor. I want to shoot better than 40% from three. And so that's interesting that, he might be best suited as like an on the ball or ball handler, distributor, primary or true point guard type of guy. And he's talking to me a lot about his shooting. What did you see from him, I guess, as a shooter, even if maybe he was playing off the ball a little bit, and maybe that's not his most natural or best fit. But if even in that scenario, his numbers all ticked up from freshman to sophomore year. Like, what do you think of him as a shooter?
Yeah, he can score. I mean, that to me was probably the best, like the best thing that he brought to the table last season for Memphis in the role, and taking into account obviously the role that he was asked to play.
Sure.
I think that was like his biggest strength to me, was his ability to score. I mean, he was, you mentioned it. He was their third leading scorer. Obviously, it was it was just a straight up bad team. So you got to take that into account as well. But
sure.
But I liked him as a scoring option. He was third on the team in scoring. He was it led the team in 3-point percentage at 36.5%. And so like that to me has never been an issue with him. And I think that, he can do that pretty much anywhere. And so, I am intrigued that, that like he's got some very specific and tangible, hard and fast goals for like what he wants to do, like how he, like from an efficiency standpoint, like a scoring efficiency standpoint, that that's what he's like focusing on. I think that to me that bodes well. If you're an Ohio State fan, that somebody who who did what he did last year in those areas, like he did I thought he did pretty well as a scorer, and he's still like, he's not satisfied. He's still hungry to do better. I think that's promising for both him and for Ohio State fans.
When you think about when he, like you said, if Penny would like mix up the lineups or, whatever, when he would maybe be running the point more, I look at like his numbers on KenPom, and I mean, he's a pretty steady assist guy. And, it looks like there's certainly like that ability is there. When he is on the ball, what is he like as a distributor, as a playmaker? Like, is he, how skilled is he, I guess, at like getting guys in position to get their shots and all that kind of stuff? Like, what do you like about him when he is on the ball?
Yeah, see, I feel like that is where that was always the thing to me about him this past season that I felt like needed some real work. He tended to, and I thought it was interesting that he said that he needed to, he told you that he wanted to, to work on his playing off ball screens.
Yeah.
I thought that was really, really insightful, an insightful response from him, because I think he's right. I think that he does need to take some steps forward in that area. And I don't know, honestly, like sometimes a player just doesn't fit a certain system. And again,
sure,
Penny's offense is, for better or worse, very much a free-flowing. Players are given a lot of freedom under, like in Penny's offense, and that doesn't always, gel very well with certain players. Like certain players just aren't built to play that way. That they need more structure and they need more discipline and those sorts of things. And I feel like maybe Curtis Givens, like he might fit into that category. Like maybe it just wasn't the right thing for him to play that way. And so, but just based on what I saw and everything about like during his time here at Memphis, I felt like and whether it's his fault or not, again, this was not a good team. I don't know how much his teammates helped him. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? Like maybe having more talent around him or a better team around him would help. But just the way that everything shook out this past season, like he just struggled to like find a rhythm and find a groove when he had the ball in his hands. And so, yeah, it was just sort of herky jerky and and bumpy a little bit. Not that there you didn't see stuff that made you think, oh well, there's obviously something there. Like you can tell that there is something there. It's just not, for whatever reason, it's just not clicking.
Yeah.
I think it was more so that than it was, oh well, he's just got a long way to go.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I'm curious, like what it was like on your end, just kind of getting to, I mean, you've obviously known him for a while, and covering him, at that high school level, thinking he's going to play at Memphis, and then when he comes back. But when I asked him, like, one of the things I always ask the guys, like whenever I'm interviewing someone that commits out of the portal, is, I feel like I'm trying to get to know them, and also like the readers and the fans are trying to get to know them. So usually the last question I'll ask is just like, what do you hope like Ohio State fans will see from you this year? And you get all kinds of different answers usually with that question. And so when I asked him that, he talked about like owing them the ability to play hard, and that, he knows that he's a transfer and they don't really know him. And he talked about like, I really hope they see a kid that really cares and takes a lot of pride in the game of basketball, and I owe it to them to play hard, that kind of stuff. What was he like, just kind of like getting to know him and covering him? Like I was impressed with that answer. It seemed like a very kind of well thought out, mature response to that question. And I'm curious what it was like on your end, just kind of covering him, getting to know him a bit.
Yeah. He's always been like, you can tell he's got a good head on his shoulders. Like he's always been a good stand up, solid individual. And I think, that matters. Like I really do. No matter what you're doing, like if you're, playing sports or if you're doing whatever, like I think it always matters. But like, so like every interaction that I ever had with him was always positive. And I think that, him saying that about, wanting people to recognize that, that he's going to give it everything he's got and that sort of thing. Like he really didn't ever, that I could tell, like he never left anything on the floor. Like he played very, very hard and gave it everything he had every time he stepped on the floor. Now there were some, I think he missed 7 games, I want to say, with a couple of injuries. Yeah. And like it was, I want to say one was like
he said he got kneed in like the thigh. He wasn't wearing like his pads, and he said that held him out for a little while.
Yep, there was a deep thigh bruise that he got, and I think it was the Wake Forest game in the Bahamas. And then there was something later in the season that took him out for a game or two. And but I do think that basketball means a lot to him, and also how he's perceived means a lot to him. And so I think those two things combined are like, you're gonna see it. You're gonna see that like he's not one of those types of guys who you ever have to wonder if they care.
Yeah. Well, I've already kind of kept you a little bit longer than I had initially planned. So I hope I'm not taking away from anything. I just have just a few more quick ones for you.
Oh no, absolutely. I'm all good.
Okay, I appreciate that. First one. So when he ultimately decides to enter the transfer portal after 1 year there at Memphis, like what was the reaction? Was there surprise? Was this? I mean, I feel like I apologize. I don't know if you can hear my dog. Who decided to just announce herself here.
That's okay. The more the merrier.
These days, I know like none of us can ever assume anybody's staying or going or doing whatever. But what was the reaction then when he did decide to transfer? Was it surprise? Did people see it coming, or what was the reaction to that?
Well, I think that the assumption from a lot of Memphis fans when there is a player from Memphis on the team is that they're going to stay. Like that's kind of the assumption. And so when he went into the portal, it did surprise a large segment of the fan base. But obviously, going back to what I was saying before, like it should never come as a surprise, no matter who it is, especially the way things have gone the last handful of seasons. Like it should never be a surprise if somebody is going to go into the transfer portal and leave Memphis.
Yep.
Like it just, and I mean, and I say, like, obviously it's not saying that no other schools, like that everybody else doesn't deal with the same thing, but Memphis, especially just the last few years, has been hit hard by people leaving for the transfer portal. So it should never come as a surprise when that happens. And honestly, it really wasn't a surprise. Like it just wasn't overly smooth, and not necessarily putting it all on his shoulders, but like, when you have a 13-19 season and it's your worst season in 56 years, like borderline once in a lifetime bad type season, how much from that season do you really want to carry over is the thing. And I think that really entered into the equation on both sides. Like I don't think Penny or Memphis wanted to keep much from that season, and I don't think many of the players wanted to try to run it back. So it should not have been that much of a surprise. Of course, the other part of it is that Memphis is a very passionate place, and they have a very passionate fan base.
Absolutely.
And they really don't, sometimes it's the native sons who are held to a higher standard than the transplants. And that can create sort of an uncomfortable dynamic if you're from here and you're wearing the name across your chest and you don't exactly live up to expectations, then the criticism can be pretty strong. And there's that sort of politicky type stuff that can come into the picture. So I think it was, the general consensus that I heard was that it was just best for both parties to amicably part ways, just given the way things played out this past season.
Sure. Okay. Well, two more questions for you. One, along those lines of like, when you have a season like that, you're not going to run it back with too many people, but Ohio State fans had 1 year of Aaron Bradshaw, and then you had 1 year of covering him. And I mean, I read all the stuff that you were writing about him all year, and kept pretty good tabs on Memphis because I was just kind of curious how it would go. What was 1 year of the Aaron Bradshaw experience like for you?
For me or for Memphis?
Well, I guess let's go with Memphis. Like, what did you make of his year there? And obviously now he's looking for a fourth school in 4 years. But what did you see this year as far as what he gave them and what that season looked like for him?
Well, to me, the most interesting thing was like the expectations weren't very high at this point. Like he had already been to Kentucky and it didn't go well. He'd been to Ohio State and it didn't go well there, like very much better. And so the expectations, I think, were pretty low. And that's what we saw for the first few weeks of his season. Like it just wasn't, he was about as advertised. And while it's disappointing for the fans here, it's also like, well, this is who he is. So like, should we be that surprised? But then he really started to, there was that story that came out that Penny was finding him
Yeah.
He was docking his pay, his revenue sharing payments because he was like not following team rules or whatever.
Right.
Like somewhere in that neighborhood, he turned a corner. And again, we're speaking relatively here. We're speaking relative to Aaron Bradshaw, not, I'm not saying that he turned into an all-conference performer by any stretch of the imagination, but he was really making significant strides, like progressively making significant strides as the season went along. And like, I'm trying to pull up real quick. I broke down the numbers in the story that I wrote when he entered the transfer portal. It was something like through his first 5 games, it was something like 4 points and 2 rebounds a game or something through his first 5 games. But then over his next 19, his first 5 games, he was 4.4 points and 1.2 rebounds a game. And then over his next 19 games, he averaged 10.8 points on 59% from the field and 5.4 rebounds. And he also had 12 of his 16 blocks during that span on the whole season. So like something was working, something was clicking, something had clicked. And I don't know if it was, a combination of things that Penny was doing to sort of unlock him, or if it was playing weaker competition, because by that point in the season they're starting to get into the bye games and the American Conference games, and but still, like, that's better than what you had been getting. And then he got hurt. He like twisted his ankle, and it was pretty ugly looking. I don't know if you saw it, but
it was gross.
Yeah, it was like his knee and his ankle, and I mean, it looked like it was going to be a season ender. But then he came back from it a game or two later, but he wasn't exactly the same. And then a couple games after that, goes down to South Florida, tries to brace himself as he dives on the floor and like dislocates his elbow. If you could have an even uglier injury that he did. Like, I was told that let me back up. He has that injury and he comes back and he doesn't miss any time for that, which is a testament to him, because I was told that had he been a baseball player, his season would have been over. Like, he would have probably had to have Tommy John surgery. So, I think he made real significant progress during his time at Memphis. And, like, I was hearing that he was 100% like wanting to come back, even though he was probably going to get significantly less money. He was all in on coming back. And then, as it turned out, as the off season went on, he was going to get a little bit less, and then he was going to get a little bit less, and then he was going to get a little bit less, to the point where he had no choice basically but to leave. So I think it would have been a really good thing for him to come back. I'm not sure how good it would have been for Memphis, but I do think it would have been a really good thing for him. And so from that standpoint, I'm a little bit, bummed for him. Yeah. Cause I think Penny was very good for him. And Penny's done it before. Like, even though Penny was Penny Hardaway, this all everything guard, he's built a track record for like helping unlock big men. He did it with Dane Danger a couple seasons ago, and and he's done it before. He did it with he's done it with several others. But I think it would have been really beneficial for Aaron Bradshaw to come back. But obviously, you got to take a lot more into consideration than just what it does for you from a statistical standpoint. And obviously, Penny has to think differently about what he wants to do moving forward. And so, I was I would have liked to have seen what he could have done in year 2 anywhere. Like, obviously, it would have been the first time that he'd have spent more than one season anywhere, and so I think that would have been potentially very interesting. But no, from like a non-basketball standpoint, I thought Aaron was really, really interesting as a person.
Sure.
Like, I can see where some people, it might not, like, he may make some people like look at him and be like, well, he's different. But I always thought he was, I don't know, he intrigued me, just on like a personal level. But all that to say, there was no question that he had some severe shortcomings. He's got some really weak hands, and when you're 7'1", you should definitely average more than 5 rebounds a game. So I would like to I would like to see what's next for him. That probably more so than anybody else I've covered at Memphis. I'm really intrigued to see what his next steps are.
Yeah. I'm curious what that next fit is going to look like for him, where he ends up. I share a lot of those same sentiments there.
Yeah.
Last thing for you, very different topic, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, because in your bio on the website, it says you enjoy traveling with your wife and visiting independent record stores every chance you get.
Yes.
Now, my Twitter bio says like an eternal search of a great record store, because everywhere I go, that's what I do. Like, that's my thing on the road. I can tell you the best record store in every Big Ten city, and I can tell you which Big Ten cities don't even have a good record store. So what's the record store scene in Memphis, and where are some of your favorite cities to record shop? Okay,
so I'm actually going through my Instagram feed right now because the name escapes me. But I was in Columbus a couple of years ago for the NCAA tournament.
Okay.
And I went to one there, and I'm trying to find where it was, the name of it, because it's you have to know what's the,
so
what's your go-to there?
Well, like downtown, my favorite is Spoonful Records, which is in downtown. I've become friends with the owner. I'm there enough. He's a big Oasis fan, so I've gone to Spoonful a lot. There's Used Kids Records, which is another one of my favorites. There's one sort of in the Short North area called Magnolia Thunder Pussy. I've spent time there over the years. Those are kind of there's Lost Weekend. We're actually very blessed in Columbus. There's quite a few options. There's Lost Weekend Records on High Street. That's just like in a house, kind of.
It's the Magnolia one. That's the one that I went to.
Okay.
Yes, and I loved it. I thought it was great. But yes, like, it sounds like you and I are very kindred spirits, because my entire Instagram feed is just like, I'll take a picture of the exterior and then just post that on my Instagram feed, and like leave a pseudo review. And so, yeah, but like everywhere I go, I have to find a record store, and it has become a quest. To like, everywhere I go, I have to find one, and I have to go there and experience it, because they are an experience.
Yes, absolutely.
More so than the music. Like, the music is almost secondary. It's like interacting with the employees, maybe the owner. Like I went to one in Houston. It's called Sig's Lagoon.
Okay.
And I was going through, and the one thing that I like to do when I go anywhere to any of these record stores is I like to buy at least one record that is like purely local.
Okay.
That's like not like, I don't mean like when I go to Birmingham, I get a Waxahachie record just because she's from Birmingham. I'm talking about like a real local where somebody just walks in the CD or the record or whatever and says, please sell this for me, like that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So I was in this place called Sig's Lagoon. It's called.
So yes, it is Sig's Lagoon, and I've actually been there. I covered a Columbus Crew game when they opened the season at Houston when I was on the beat, and that was the one record store I went to in Houston. So I'm familiar with Sig's Lagoon. That's amazing.
Yes, it's like got the green exterior, sort of the light green exterior,
Yep.
and so anyway, I went there and I was thumbing through the like the local section, and I found this record, and all it said on the cover was Raceway, and that's all it said. It's just like, okay, this is $10, let's do it. So I go and I go to check out, and the guy goes, "Why did you pick this?" And I said, "Well," I explained to him why, and he goes, "Well, that's awesome. This was my band," and I was just like, "Oh, well, like, I need you to sign it, like please,
yeah,
like let's do this." And so, yeah, like that to me, those types of experiences almost are more important to me than the actual like finding music and listening to it later or whatever. But yeah, like that's my thing when I go somewhere is I got to find a record store. Have you been to Cactus Music in Houston?
No, I think I just went to the one. I think that was all I had time for.
Well, next chance you get, go to Cactus. Cactus is fantastic. It's called Cactus Music.
Okay.
But yeah, in Memphis, like we're blessed. Memphis is sort of a music city. There's our office is just a few steps away from Beale Street. And so for anybody who's listening who may come to Memphis and likes to go to record stores, there's Shangri-La Records, which is really, really good. Really, really good shop. It's like one of those ones that you mentioned where it's like just in a house and converted into a record store. And then we've got Goner Records, which is actually not just a record store, but it's a record label. And it specializes in sort of like punkier, like metal, like more, rock type music, although they've got selections, limited selections of pop and everything else, but it's more of a sort of a grungier vibe when you go into Goner Records. And then we've got River City Records, which is the newest one, which is we're basically neighbors here downtown Memphis with our office, and they're fantastic as well. So those are the must visits when you come to Memphis. But yeah, no, I can't believe this. Like, I can't believe we've never.
Yeah, it's funny you telling that story about SIDS. I went. One of my favorite cities in the Big Ten is whenever I get to go to Minnesota and go to Minneapolis, because there's two there, and one is more of like a sort of a used place, Cheapo Records. And one time that I was there, I found I'm a big fan of the Airborne Toxic event, and their debut album. Like, I was just thumbing through things. Like, I own everything they've ever released, but I was like, they actually had like a header for them. So I was like, oh, what do they have by Airborne? And I looked, and they had their debut album autographed by the entire band, and it was just like a used copy. It's like $3. Like, I mean, I have like autographed stuff from them, but I was like, well, there's no way I'm not buying this. So it's like, it's not exactly the same as like, oh, hey, you met the guy whose band you bought the store owner's band's album that had him autograph it, but like, I'll always remember just like, that was like a 1 in a million find at a record store. Like,
yeah.
So that's super cool. And yeah, we'll have to keep trading messages back and forth when we hit new cities then, because I'm always looking for recommendations.
Well, I don't get a chance to visit many Big Ten cities for whatever reason. Memphis just doesn't cross over very often with like, they don't do home and homes with Big Ten teams very often. But when I do, I'm going to absolutely, or if I'm ever anywhere in the neighborhood, obviously I was in Columbus, but now I know who to go to.
Absolutely.
And you can do the same for me. Like, I've been doing this now. Like, I did this before I got here. Like, I used to cover Southern Miss in Mississippi, and it started way back then. So I mean, I would say I counted up somewhat recently, like the number of different record stores that I've visited in the last 10 or 15 years, and it's up over 120. So
I love it.
So I can, wherever you go, I can probably give you a recommendation. But I'm always in search of more. So I'm trying to think if Memphis. Do you know what Ohio State's non-conference schedule looks like this year?
They haven't really finalized a whole lot yet. I know they'll be at Notre Dame. They'll play. They're playing BYU in Salt Lake City, and they'll play in the CBS Sports Classic. It's going to be in Madison Square Garden, so it'll be New York City.
You can throw a rock and hit something there.
Got to go to Brooklyn these days.
Yeah, I mean, there's a place called Black Gold Records in Brooklyn, actually. And then a place called Psychic Records. I was there back in 21, I think. So those are two good spots.
Awesome. Well, we'll continue this discussion off air here. Yeah, but Jason, I kept you like 3 times as long as I had asked, so I appreciate you sticking with me and for sharing your insights there. And you'd be surprised. I actually do hear from listeners on the podcast who I'll often just drop like a little music thought or two at the end, something I bought or something I'm listening to, and people have actually responded to it. So maybe we have a future crossover here.
Hey, I'm down with that. Like if we want to start like a Gannett record store podcast, I think we've stumbled onto something here.
I love it. Thanks again so much, Jason.
All right. Thanks, Adam.
All right. Thanks again to Jason for coming on and joining us here on this episode of the Buckeye Extra podcast. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. And like I said, we're all kind of learning these new players together. Hopefully you're finding this as beneficial as I am, because there's a lot of ground to cover here. And we're almost in May. It's kind of wild. Other bit of news that's probably worth passing along here is that we got some notification, or some notification is the right word. The NCAA is continuing to discuss the new 5-year eligibility rule, and pending lawsuits, which, we can never dismiss these days because it doesn't seem like the courts ever want to. There remains a slight possibility that everyone who played last year, all the seniors last year, could get a 5th year. But the way that this is being implemented is that it will begin with like this upcoming season. So if you're on a roster starting this year, you'll get 5 years of eligibility. And there's some age requirements to this too, as far as like coming right out of high school. And, partially this will help, curb having, or it'll make it more equitable, I guess, when you have like international players who have played professionally in some cases or whatever, and the schooling systems are different. Like they're trying to streamline this and make it a little bit more equitable for everyone. Certainly the argument that is already being raised is how players who just finished their 4th year of eligibility and are out of eligibility, how when those guys started as freshmen, they had to play. It was coming out of the COVID time and everyone had 5 years then. And so they're playing against older guys. And then the guys who are freshmen this year will have that, but they didn't get that, and how that. And I guess my personal feeling on this whole situation is that I don't think it is fair to anybody to retroactively grant everyone who played last year an extra year of eligibility now, because not only then are you disadvantaging, is that a word? It's, first of all, schools already have their rosters mostly built out, their money spent and whatever. Like that I guess is what it is. But like in a hypothetical here, and I cannot stress enough, this is purely a hypothetical, but it's the most pertinent one to my listeners here. But like, say that everyone who played last year now gets a 5th year of eligibility, and say that means that Bruce Thornton is going to come back to Ohio State for a 5th year at Ohio State. Well, what does that do to all the guys who have committed to, like, what does that do to Justin Pippen? And how is it fair, take that example and then extrapolate that to every other potential situation across college basketball. How is that fair to those players who have already committed and signed and are set to play somewhere, and then their role, I cannot imagine that Justin Pippen would want to come in and be, Gabe Cupps come play 10 to 12 minutes off the bench behind Bruce Thornton playing 40 a game and John Mobley playing 36 a game like that. So then what you do in that case is then you would then set off this whole second wave of guys who had all their options when the portal was open and the rules were what they were, made a decision, and then the whole universe changes, and then they have to maybe go look again. But by now, if they maybe had 20 options in April, they might have 3 now. It's not fair to those players. If we want to talk about the fifth-year guys who aren't, or the guys who aren't getting a fifth year and how it's not fair to them, well, making them suddenly eligible for next year at this juncture wouldn't be fair to anybody else who's on those rosters right now. So in this case, assuming that this does hold and that it doesn't get sued into oblivion and suddenly everybody can play, I'm all for player power and I'm all for guys should get what they can get. And I'm not speaking against that necessarily, but I think that if this becomes a situation where guys magically who were seniors last year now get a fifth year of eligibility, it will have so many unintended consequences across all the rosters and will disadvantage a much greater percentage of the college basketball ecosystem than it will, quote unquote, damage guys who aren't getting a fifth year. And it's my selfish hope that that these rules stay how they're being proposed, and that if we're going to 5 years for everybody, it starts next year. It starts with if you were playing last year under one set of rules, then last season ended under one set of rules. And now we're starting a new chapter, and that only applies to people who are part of the new chapter. I think that's the fairest way to do it. If you think I'm a complete idiot, well, as always, you can send along your questions, your comments, your love notes, your hate mail, and otherwise constructive criticism to me at Adam Jardy on Twitter or ajardyddispatch.com. Thanks again for listening. Thanks to Jason for joining us. Thanks to Patrick Flaherty, the Podfather, for getting this out to you all. I'll be back with you most likely by the end of the week. As you know, it gets a little loosey-goosey this time of year, but I'm sure we'll be talking again before too much longer. So until then, be kind, take care, and we'll talk soon. Donato's is legendary for putting so much on their pizzas, but just listen to what they're taking off. Right now, buy any large pizza and add a large one-topping pizza for half off. Use promo code HALF. Donato's, gotta love more.
Be sure and subscribe to the BuckeyeXtra podcast in the iTunes Store, the Google Play Store, or on Stitcher.